People at Work. The Customs Officer. A Ladybird book. First published in 1972. The Customs Department was formed many hundreds of years ago. In the old days, the work of the customs officers was very dangerous. They were armed with swords and pistols, as they often had to protect themselves from armed smugglers. Sometimes they were killed. Some of them rode along the coast on horseback. They were called riding officers. They were looking for smugglers. Today their job is not so dangerous, but it is still very exciting. About 200 years ago, one of the main jobs of a customs officer was to stop people smuggling wool out of the country. There was a heavy tax on any wool that was exported. In areas like the Romney Marshes in Kent, local men defied the law. On misty nights, they would make their way down to the beach, where a boat would be waiting to take their wool to France or Flanders. The smuggling of wool to France was known as owling. When you arrive back in Great Britain from a holiday abroad, you will see a customs officer. He's dressed in a blue uniform, very much like that of an officer in the Navy. His job is to prevent any smuggling. Smuggling means bringing goods into the country without paying a tax, called duty, or bringing in goods which are forbidden, such as guns and drugs. Before you can leave a seaport or airport, you must pass through a customs hall. Here there are notices telling you what you must do if you have obtained anything while abroad. You must tell the customs officer. He will ask to see it. If it is allowed, he will pass it. You may have to pay duty, and he will tell you how much. Duty is a payment of money to the government. It has to be paid on most things obtained abroad. A customs officer may ask you to open your suitcases, and you must obey. He then searches it. Sometimes, if a passenger is a real smuggler, the customs officer finds things hidden in the false bottom of a suitcase. A customs officer may still not be satisfied. He then takes the traveller to a search room. There he searches the clothes the traveller is wearing. Sometimes smugglers hide things in their pockets or inside their coats. Some even have specially made waistcoats strapped to their bodies. Small things like diamonds are hard to find on a smuggler. They may be inside a fountain pen or in the heel of a shoe. When a customs officer is satisfied that a passenger is honest, he makes a mark on the passenger's luggage. He does this with a piece of coloured chalk. Each officer has his own mark. The colour of the chalk is changed very often. This makes it difficult for a smuggler himself to put a mark on the cases. As the passengers leave the customs hall, they have to pass another customs officer. He makes sure that every piece of luggage is marked. If you have taken your car abroad, you go through another customs shed. The port that deals with most cars is Dover. In the summer, thousands pass through every day. One customs officer examines the luggage. He also makes sure that it is the same car that went out of the country. Some cars are searched. The officers who do this are experts. They know all the places where smugglers can hide things. Sometimes they're watching for special cars about which they have information. Another Another duty of the customs officers at the ports is to control the entry of certain animals and birds. Some of these, such as dogs and cats, have to be kept in special kennels for some months. This is to make sure that they do not bring dangerous diseases into the country, and it's called going into quarantine. The customs officer sees that they are brought ashore in proper crates. They are then taken to the quarantine kennels without coming into contact with any other animals. When he joins the customs department, an assistant officer goes to school. This is a special school where he learns his job. At this school, older customs officers are the teachers, and they have been doing the work for a long time. At the school, there are model ships which can be taken to pieces. The young customs officer is taught where sailors can hide things. Among many other things, he is taught how to make out reports. Later on, he will often have to appear in court and give evidence. He learns how to do this properly. In big ports such as London and Liverpool, many customs officers never see a passenger. They have other duties to do. One of these is called boarding. Every ship that arrives from a foreign country is boarded by a customs officer. He is the first person to go aboard the ship. This officer is not looking for smugglers. He has to do other official business. Usually he goes on the ship when it arrives in dock. Sometimes he has to go out to the ship in a motorboat. In rough weather, this can be very dangerous. First, the customs officer goes to see the captain. He asks the captain about the health of everyone on the ship. The captain must report any illness during the voyage. If all is well on the ship, the customs officer signs a certificate called a pratique. Once the captain has this, his passengers and crew can go ashore. Next, the officer has to see all members of the crew. Perhaps the ship has been on a long voyage to India or Australia. Often the sailors have brought many presents for their families. They must show these to the officer and pay duty on them if necessary. Then the customs officer has to check the ship's stores. He counts and weighs all the spirits, wine and tobacco on the ship. While the ship is in port, the customs officer has these stores placed in a special room. He then seals the door with an official seal. Every customs officer has his own seal with a different number on it. Sometimes he uses sealing wax. If there is a risk of fire or on an oil tanker, for instance, he uses a lead seal. This is called a plumb. The customs officer also visits the ship regularly while it is unloading. He has various jobs to do during these visits. One is to break the seal and issue tobacco to the crew. He also has to check any new stores that are taken on the ship for the next voyage. When a ship has landed all its cargo, the customs officer inspects the holds. He then gives the captain a certificate, and the ship can then take on cargo for another voyage. Other custom officers are on rummage duties. They can go on any ship and search it from top to bottom. This can be a very dirty job. They wear overalls and a peaked cap instead of a smart uniform. They carry a strong torch, a jemmy, and a tuck stick. A tuck stick is like a thin walking stick. It is pointed and made of steel. The customs officer can push it into sacks of flour or coal or cargoes of wheat. If he hits anything hard, he uncovers whatever it is. On a big ship, there are hundreds of places where a sailor could hide things. These hiding places can be behind cupboards, in sacks of food, or inside pipes. In the engine room, there are all kinds of possible places. The customs officer knows them all. He has been trained to find them, and usually does. There are no new places. Rummaging is very interesting work. Every ship is different, and so are the crews. Crews may be made up of Greeks or Swedes, Japanese, or any other nationality you can think of. The customs department has a large number of motorboats. Many ships have to be visited in the middle of a river. In London, they are often boarded at the mouth of the Thames. Here, the river is very wide. The customs officers patrol the river in their fast motorboats. Each officer is in charge of a stretch of the river. This is called his station. Some small ships go a long way up large rivers where they are much narrower. Ships in these places have to be visited too. Around the coasts, the customs department has much bigger boats. These are called revenue cruisers. The customs officers live on these ships just as sailors do. These ships cruise around the coasts. The officers look for smugglers who might land at very quiet places. They also keep an eye on yachts. Some big smugglers use yachts to bring things like brandy from France. After all, at some places along the coast, France is only about 21 miles from England. In all the little seaports around the coast there is a customs officer. There may be only one in some places. Not only must he look out for smugglers, he has other duties as well. Sometimes he uses a room in his house as an office. He takes charge of all wrecks. A wreck can be anything that is washed up on the shore in his area. Sometimes the body of a cow or even a whale is washed up. He has to see that it is buried. In a small port, the customs officer has to keep a register of fishing boats. He makes a record of who owns them. He gives each boat an official number. Then he sees that this is painted on the side of the boat and on any sails. The letters painted on a boat tell you where it has been registered. He has to measure any new fishing boat. Then he can work out how many tons it weighs. He visits any yachts that may come into his harbour. He has plenty to do. Many parts of the coast are very deserted, but every part is visited regularly by men from the customs department. They are called coast preventative men. They're often men who've been in the Navy or the Army. Each one has several miles of coast to look after. He often visits his area in the middle of the night. At one time, coast preventative men used to walk along the coast. Now they are provided with small cars. These are blue with a customs badge painted on the side. There are many customs officers at London Airport. An airliner has to be boarded when it arrives, just as the ship is. London Airport is enormous. An airliner lands every few minutes. The customs officers have a blue van which is fitted out like an office. It also has a radio. They can listen to the control tower. They find out which aircraft is landing and to which part of the airport it is going. The customs officers can then drive there and meet it when it arrives. There are also women customs officers. They're mostly at big airports and seaports that deal with passengers. They wear a smart blue uniform, and their main job is to search women passengers. They can also search women in the ship's crew. These might be stewardesses, nurses, or perhaps hairdressers on big passenger liners. If they are not busy, they help with the office work. The largest customs sections of all you do not see very often. Customs officers in this section are not looking for smugglers. They do not wear a uniform. Duty has to be paid on all goods that come into the country. This means that all the cargoes that come into the big merchant ships have to be checked. The customs officers do this on the dockside or in a big shed on the quay. A big ship can carry thousands of tons of goods. The customs officers must therefore collect hundreds of thousands of pounds during his work. There are also custom officers at all places where beer and spirits are made. In Scotland there is an officer at all the factories where whisky is made. These factories are called distilleries. Some of them are in very small places away in the mountains. The officer makes a note of how much whisky is made. Then he tells the company how much duty there is to pay. He takes charge of the whisky until the duty has been paid, and then he allows the whisky to be taken away. There are also officers at all tobacco factories.